Hi, this is Tracy Coyer, host of The Real Americans. I'm here to introduce you to one of our candidates for governor, Mr. Chuck Morse.
Good morning.
Chuck has been the Senate president
8 years.
8 years, and we'd like to take the opportunity to let the citizens of Merrimack get to know a little bit more about Chuck. So we're going to roll right into it. And Chuck, it's a pleasure to see you again.
Good to see you, Tracy.
And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're going?
Sure. Well, let me tell you, I grew up in New Hampshire. I grew up in Salem. I had a father that was a veteran who was almost 100% deaf. The marriage between my mother and father didn't last very long. So I grew up pretty quick. I knew how to run a vacuum and mow the lawn pretty early in life. Mom worked pretty hard. She worked for the IRS. And then I tell everybody the story that when it came to the holiday seasons, my mother would go pluck turkeys to put presents under the tree. And she was the kind of mother that made sure we were in church every Sunday. So that was a pretty strong upbringing that I had. And she always volunteered and she taught us that. And as we went along, I wanted to go to college, and it was important to me. I had to work a little harder. I didn't have a president that was going to write a check, to pay for my college. So I worked pretty hard to do that, and my wife Susan actually did the same thing. But we ended up at Plymouth State. I was a little older when I got there. When I got there, I really wanted to be successful in the nursery and garden center business, and that's where my opportunities opened up in business. And when I worked for a gentleman for 4 years, I said, you know what, I want to do this myself. So I built a nursery, bought 3.5 acres of land, and went in debt up to my eyebrows. But it was great. And Susan came along at that point in time. We got married, and we grew a business, and we had a daughter. And as things got successful, I started giving back to the community. And
How long have you been married now, Chuck?
we got married in 1991. We had our daughter 5 years later.
Nice.
And during that time period, that was really where the company started to grow. And we ate a lot of pizza during that time period, but it worked for us. And when we had our daughter, we made a big decision in life. And I tell everybody, before I had my daughter, I was making $100 a week. My wife was making the real living. Mm-hmm. But once we had our daughter, we made a decision that my wife was going to stay home with my daughter, and I was able to draw her a living and start to give back to the community. So it was pretty neat. I started working on the Boys Club Board of Directors locally, mm-hmm. and the Nursing Home Board of Directors. And in Salem, New Hampshire, when you start there, they tap you on the back right away and say, you need to get into politics. And I did that. I went in as a selectman, and right away I was getting people like Judd Gregg calling and saying, you need to get up to Concord. Mm-hmm. And I did that. I did a state rep for 2 terms, and then I went into the New Hampshire Senate. In my terms as a state rep, I was determined to build I-93. That was a big thing with me. So I worked 25 years on the first 18 miles of I-93, from permitting to financing. I worked on that whole project, and I got it done, and I'm proud of that. But as I did that, I saw the state was kind of headed in the wrong direction, so I wanted to get involved in the Senate, and I did that. I served 8 terms in the Senate, and as we noted, I was Senate President for 8 years in that time period, and I was Finance Chair for 6 more years. So I really enjoy that part of government. I enjoy working with people and talking about facts and getting things done. So that's been important.
Now, are they ever going to finish that I-93 project?
Well, I-93, the first 18 miles is done, and then the senators worked pretty hard on introducing 4A, which is the project that's being mm-hmm. built right now. But I think the bigger challenge is going up to the toll booth and moving on beyond there. I'm up for that. I'd love to see that happen in my lifetime. So I think that will help with a lot of things. And, I've been big on working on water, so this time I won't make any mistakes. I'll make sure we deliver water to all the communities around there, because we'll have the opportunity when we build that highway. So,
well, I've been living in Merrimack now for the better part of 19 years. And when my wife and I moved in, we didn't realize there was an airport right by where we live. So my wife was mowing the lawn one day, and she yelled out to me. She said, "I think there's been a plane crash." It went right over the house, and it was pretty funny. But I think the one thing that we noticed that most disturbed us when we moved here was when we tried to take a glass of water out of the faucet, and it was absolutely horrendous. So for 19 plus years, we've been drinking bottled water or filtered water, reluctantly showering in it. We don't even cook with the water in Merrimack anymore. And then it turns out that, there's been a contributor in our community that has been dumping stuff into the water. And it has not been a wonderful experience as far as the water goes, but this is probably one of the places that I've enjoyed living most. It's certainly the place that I've lived longest. And being a Massachusetts boy who lived all over the country, I used to make fun of New Hampshire like everybody else did. But here I am 20 years later, spent a year in Nashua, 19 years plus in Merrimack, and I wish I had found it sooner because, being a Republican in Massachusetts is, not easy. So, I think that, and I'd like your opinion on this. Every time the legislative term begins, I mean, you hear the cries, well, we need to have seatbelt laws. We need to have helmet laws. We need an income tax. We need a sales tax. And I think the most absurd thing that I heard, and I want to say it was 4 or 5 years ago, when Massachusetts decided they wanted New Hampshire to collect their sales tax and send it down to them. You remember that? That was absolutely beautiful. This is, you give them more money, they waste more money. We see that in the federal government, we see that in the state governments. I remember when I moved out of Worcester, I had a modest house, and my property taxes were about, $3,000 a year. And I moved up here, and I was a realtor in Massachusetts as well as a policeman. So, closing costs usually about $3,000–4,000 on a house. Up here, my property taxes virtually doubled, and my closing cost was well into the $20,000 range. And I'm just saying, wow, what did I just do? And then, as things smoothed out, I realized this is so much better. I'm not getting an excise tax bill every year. I'm not, it was, and here they are coming up again, and they're trying to bring all of that stuff back up here. It's like, we moved here to get away from that, so why are you bringing it here? And
well, I think it takes leadership. I've obviously done that. I certainly made sure that New Hampshire didn't become Massachusetts. I've worked on cutting taxes. We came back in 2011 to the legislature, and we saw that we were headed in the wrong direction. That budget was the toughest thing we'll ever do. We're $800 million in the hole. The other side thought that taxing and spending was the way to do things. We stopped all that. And we certainly put New Hampshire back on track and made sure that we were cutting taxes and driving an economy. New Hampshire's challenges today are because we're successful. We've done a great job of making us the freest state in the nation, and that's all from leadership. And cutting taxes has been part of that. That's why businesses are looking to this area and throughout the state of New Hampshire to bring their businesses to our state. And those are all challenges that, will solve the water problems. To be honest with you, Governor Sununu in 2016 put me in charge of doing that. He didn't want us to become Flint, Michigan. You have a great representative over here in Bill Boyd that took my position on the committee we built. We're solving those kind of problems. We're not ignoring them. And that's what's great about this state. And we have to keep this economy going. But I think our best days are ahead.
I agree. What would you say is our biggest challenge we're facing right now?
Yeah, I think right now, and it's obvious on the campaign trail, is the public's having a real hard time with the amount of drugs that are coming into our state, and they're extremely concerned about illegals coming into our state. I thought that's where you were going to go with the airport. But in any case, the that is number one, where I think as governor, I will make it very clear right up front. I want the legislature to deliver a bill to the governor's desk that basically says that we will not let fentanyl dealers get away with murder. And I think that's important. So we need to do that. We need to back the blue. We need to make sure that we control our own borders, because just about everywhere in New Hampshire now is a border that's open to illegals and to drugs. We need to stop that.
I can say, as a former career law enforcement officer, that I really appreciate the support that the police get in New Hampshire. We have some more liberal communities in the state that basically don't back their guys. I've got friends that are chiefs of police and detectives in other areas, and they in New Hampshire, and they all say the same thing. It's like, we're out there, we just got a guy that shot somebody, and nobody's talking, and they're letting him go. And that's not supposed to happen here. I mean, law enforcement, it's not supposed to be oppressive. It's supposed to be necessary, and there's no accountability for anybody anymore, and that's really sad.
Yeah, we need to change that. I mean, obviously, bail reform was a mistake in New Hampshire. As governor, I'll go back and I'll fix that. We shouldn't have a revolving door, on people that are committing crimes. So we need to send strong messages on that. We need to send strong messages about the drugs. And I will never fund an illegal coming into the state of New Hampshire. It's taxpayer dollars that you're paying. We shouldn't be doing it for illegals.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Now, just kind of glancing over things, and full disclosure, I am also a candidate for state representative representing Merrimack. So I'm looking forward to working with Mr. Morse in the State House. When you're knocking on doors, you're hearing everybody tell you, they have certain concerns. And the other side has a tendency to lie, to be perfectly frank. And there's so many things that are being said that aren't exactly true. And when the Dobbs decision came down just a few years ago, everybody was losing their mind. And you hear Democrats who are running for state office absolutely lying about what the abortion laws are in New Hampshire. Now, I'm going to say first off that I think that the Dobbs decision was a good decision because it returned powers to the state, and we all know that if a power is not specifically spelled out in the Constitution, it's therefore, back to a states' right issue. So why don't you tell me what you think about that? And I know you have a little bit of information on this subject.
Well, let me be crystal clear about this. We did not ban abortion in New Hampshire. In the first 6 months, a mother gets to make a decision with her doctor and her family. That's the way we set it up. In the third trimester, we banned partial birth abortion. Mm-hmm. And we made that clear, and we protected the life of the mother. That's what passed in New Hampshire. We passed that in 2021. We knew that there was going to be this federal decision that was coming forward in the court system, and we wanted to put New Hampshire in a place that the state made a decision. We did that, and 80% of the public agrees with us.
So why is it that people are so comfortable with lying about what the state's law is?
Well, I think when you have nothing else to talk about, that's what you do. You go right to the fact that you think you're sending a message that you're protecting women and women's rights, and we did that. Mm-hmm. It was important to me. I have a wife. I have a daughter. I certainly rely on them when I talk about political issues, at the dinner table. My daughter, now married a year. She's not
Congratulations,
at the same,
by the way.
Well, it's great. I'm rooting for grandchildren. But the fact is, I do care. And I care about what they believe in. And I certainly am a pro-life candidate, but I saw where the public would vote together. And that's what we passed in 2021. And I think it's an important relationship that we have to have with the public, is that we're listening to them.
You see incrementalism coming pretty much all the time, and that's pretty much the way they do things. And we can go back to 30 years ago. We want a non-smoking section in a restaurant. Okay, 10%. Okay, now we want 90% non-smoking and 10% smoking section, and now we want to ban smoking, in public. And then it doesn't matter if it's smoking or seatbelts or anything else. They just incrementally take away your rights, just a little bit at a time. Well, nobody's gonna say anything about, having to wear your seatbelt. And I remember when I was a policeman in Massachusetts, back in 1984, there was a seatbelt law. It was rejected by the public, and it was withdrawn 2 years later. And then 2 years after that, they put it in again and said, oh, absolutely not will anybody ever be pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt. And then 10 years later, there's the click it or ticket bill. And it's just like, you let them get an inch, and my gosh, they're going to have everything in no time. And all they're doing is limiting your freedoms. That's all they're doing. Now, if you want to wear a seatbelt, I think that's a great idea. If you want to ride a motorcycle with no helmet, great. You want to wear a helmet? That's your choice. It's not the government's job to protect you from yourself. It's the government's job to protect you from other people. And as soon as we get back to those fundamentals, I think we're going to be a lot better off.
And we've been fighting hard to get back to those fundamentals. Personal responsibility is what the state of New Hampshire was built on. Mm-hmm. And that's really how I've governed the whole time I've been involved. I've been giving back for a lot of years, and I believe that's the way you do things. The other half of me believes, that you need to keep government small, and that works on the spending side, it works on the taxation model side. I've done all that. That's what I've been fighting for everyone all the time I've been up there, and I think that's the way New Hampshire thrives, but that comes from leadership, and we certainly just got voted the freest state in the nation. Took 12 years to get us there, 12 years. So we worked pretty hard at getting it done. Let's keep it there and let's make it better.
I think one of the most important things about New Hampshire government is how limited it actually is. And you see surrounding states, Massachusetts, Vermont, Maine, all of their legislators are paid. And some of them are paid pretty handsomely. And we, under your guidance and the way the state's constitution is set up, is we're not a professional government. We're a volunteer government. So we're not here to make ungodly sums of money and take money on the side to do things like other places, including our federal government, which is amazing. It's just so impressive to see people like yourself that are willing to do this. And we understand the governor's a slightly different job than being Senate president or senator in general, or even representative, because now that is a legitimate full-time job, as opposed to, being in the houses. Do you think that we'll ever fall to the point where we'll start paying legislators and then we'll lose the honesty in our government?
No, absolutely not. And let me be clear, as I volunteered, that was a full-time job. I'll explain my day. I got $125 a year to be Senate president, and I was proud and honored to be Senate president in our state. But I would go to work to my company, Freshwater Farms, at 3, 4 in the morning, so I had the ability to go to Concord 5 days a week to work up there as Senate president. Like you said, it's a volunteer job, but there's a lot that goes into that volunteer job as Senate president. The best bargain the public ever got was my being up there, for $125 a year, but I loved it. And you can accomplish a lot, and you can give back, And that's important to our state, and we need to keep it that way. If you put money into it, you'll end up like the federal government, and that's just a huge mistake. We need to clean that up down in Washington and not let that come into New Hampshire.
Well, and that's the beauty of New Hampshire. We're more concerned about preserving rights and liberties than expanding our government. Because when is government, and we think about all the services government runs, what's the most efficient part of the government, the bureaucracy? Is it the post office? Well, probably not. Is it, the healthcare system? Definitely. What has a large government ever done that has been more efficient than the private sector? Can you think of anything?
No, and I think New Hampshire, the fact that we have 400 reps that you can meet in the grocery store, 24 state senators, that you can run into anywhere. They're always out working events and everything. Mm-hmm. And a governor's council, that was built, to keep the governor in check, and I respect that part of it too. And then a governor. People get to talk to all these people in New Hampshire, and they get to express their concerns, and I think that's the way it should work. And when that happens and people are putting their input in, you have a better state, and that's what it's all about. But I also think it takes leadership, and that's what I've shown for all the years I've been up there.
Okay. I just want to touch on a couple more things as we're starting to wind down here a little bit. Remember back in early 2020 where we were going to flatten the curve, and then we shut businesses down, and you had to stand 6 feet away from everybody, and your local businesses couldn't function, but Lowe's, Home Depot, and all these other huge companies were still allowed to function. I mean, would you actually allow that to happen again?
No, I mean, the governor and I definitely disagreed on closing businesses. I believe in personal responsibility. Mm-hmm. I think that is the way that should work, and I certainly would continue to fight for that. I would never close things. I think people will make decisions that work for them. I point out, my wife and I, during COVID, got permission to go sit on the steps of a golf course, and while we were out there, we were sitting there with our dog and just out in the public, and hundreds of people, were coming and walking, the golf course because they wanted to be outside. Mm-hmm. They wanted to go to church. I think that's an important part of how New Hampshire functions. People will make the right decisions, and let them make that decision. The government should stay as small as possible, and that's how I've done it.
Agreed. Now, it's the question that everybody... That's not supposed to be on. Okay.
See, now, if you were in the New Hampshire Senate when I was Senate President, you would be buying lunch for the Senate that phone went off.
More than happy to buy you lunch. Getting back to, where everybody is, and, we go back to Reagan and say, speak no evil of Republicans. And what makes you the better choice for governor?
Yeah, and I think this is extremely important. I've got the job done. That's what I did as Senate President. Whether it was cutting taxes to drive an economy and make us the most livable state in the nation, or it was passing constitutional carry to make us one of the safest states in the nation. We did that in 2017 as I was Senate President. We did this thing, and we haven't talked about education, but I firmly believe that we need to present every opportunity to children, and we need to build a strong education system. I passed education freedom accounts because I believe you needed to have education choice. We all worked together in the early 2000s to pass charter schools. Look at the successes that have happened. We can do good things together if we keep talking about it. But those things all happened under my watch as Senate President, and I certainly worked with Republicans, Democrats, and I got the legislature to work with the governor to get things done. That's what it's all about. That's the difference between Kelly and I. I don't have that Washington mentality. I certainly, didn't go and become a conservative, from the government. I went to New Hampshire, and I was a conservative when I got there, and I'm still a conservative. Kelly went to Washington. She went in as a conservative and came out the third most liberal U.S. senator. And as we talk about how we're going to solve problems, I told you, the thing I hear the most is that border's open. They want to change in a president so that the border's closed and the drugs stop, but they also want to make sure we don't do things like Senator Ayotte did. She voted for amnesty for 11 million people. There's a big difference between the two of us. I certainly believe in the state of New Hampshire, want to keep it the state of New Hampshire, and I've been driving this economy to make your life better. That's what it's all about, and it's been a volunteer job for me that I love and my family loves, and we're giving back. So I'll continue to do that, and I hope to get that opportunity to do it as governor.
I'm certainly behind you, my friend.
Wow, I appreciate that.
We're winding down here. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, certainly. As we talk about the problems that our state have, I want you to understand those problems came from all the successes that we've had. I remember being here with Dick Hinch, in 2015 when we passed that first budget that started tax cuts, right? God bless him, because we worked hard, because we sent a bill, to the governor's office that had tax cuts, worked on mental health, worked for disabled children. We did it on purpose, and it was Governor Hassan then that vetoed that bill. And Dick and I went around all summer long working with Democrats and Republicans and groups that Republicans don't normally show up at. And we basically explained what we were trying to accomplish and how we had properly funded them. And we overrode a governor's budget. And when we overrode that governor's budget, we should have never lost that U.S. Senate seat that year, because we should have united as Republicans, and we should have won the U.S. Senate seat, because Governor Hassan did not pass that budget. We did. We got everyone together to override her budget, and we certainly shouldn't have lost the U.S. Senate seat that Kelly Ayotte lost, because we should have united as a Republican Party. I'm going to do that. I promise you that.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We will see you next time. Once again,
Tracy.
we support you.
Thank you.
And we look forward to having our next guest within a week or so. So thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.